Was that like a cue to like start speaking right there?
Yeah, I'm not sure which was caught on camera, but whatever. Okay, so without much preamble, we're gonna react to the fantasy podcast by what were they called? The fantasy, what's the site?
It's
Rate my league.
ratemyleague.com.
RateMyLeague.com, which was really fun. Um,
Luke and Adam, love those guys.
oh, I should have changed their names on the whatever. One of them's speaker one, one of them's speaker two, Luke and Adam.
Yeah,
Um,
Adam speaker one and Luke is speaker two, I believe.
okay. Well, this is the beginning of a wonderful podcast. There's an audience of 12. We have with us, I'm Paul. We have with us also Alec. Say hi, Alec.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. Paul will be our host, I think.
I guess so. And Austin, who popped in.
Hello. I had nothing better to do with my time.
Yeah, I'm probably some of the league has never heard one of us three speak, so
That's true.
now they
I
know.
think I've met everyone in our league at least once now.
I
So
have
that
not, I don't think. I want to meet Andrew. I know that he's going to come up to Chicago occasionally, so
that's
um,
honestly more than what most dynasty leagues can say
what?
to know that many people.
Well, probably most dynasty leagues have are just people who know each other in person, you know? The stuff that you see online is not a representation of all giant
Right.
dynasty.
Yeah.
Okay, this doesn't matter. All right, I'm not gonna edit this at all, so let's stay on topic.
Yeah, you guys gotta listen to all of our bullshit.
Yeah, where can I see how long? Okay, so we've been recording for 2 minutes already. Okay, maybe I will cut some.
Wow.
Let's go ahead and start. Oh, I should also bring up that sheet that they included, a PDF. So we do have a transcript here, so we're going to go through that. I don't imagine anyone's ever going to listen to this podcast. Maybe Sam. Okay. What do you guys
Yeah,
think of the
well,
podcast overall?
I mean, dude, that got me through my work day today. That was great.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, it was super fun to listen to.
I just saw like Sleeper blowing up, and I saw that it was posted, and dude, that literally made my day.
Yeah, that was a
So much
great
fun.
idea. I know that Andrew. I mean, he's been, he wants to get a trophy going and everything. I mean, I think it's because he won the league year one, but still, uh, I think we should get a trophy that has the little plaques that you get engraved, and you
Yeah,
can
like the
add one.
Stanley Cup.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
exactly.
down.
Yeah, you can get like one that has like 12 different spots on there in 12 years. That's
This shit'll
pretty
go on for 100 years. It'll run out of space.
good. I guess after you run out of space, it could go to the person who won the most championships, and they can keep it, and we start a new trophy.
Mm.
Okay, we're off to a good start.
Yeah, so they started off by talking about our league settings, which obviously no bias here. We have the best league settings. Uh, 22, 22 starters, 53 bench spots, right?
53
All,
roster, half
yeah,
PPR
that's what I mean.
super
The roster.
flex. Doing a lot of it right. Transcript's not perfect. It just works well. IDP 123 is what they're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, I'm hard agreed there, right?
yeah, and I think most of the league is strongly in agreement as well, especially after year two. I think year one was a little bit crazy with some of the defensive end scoring, and that kind of colored it for some. I know, I understand, but it seems to me that people, especially with the voting this year, the voting at the end of last year,
Right.
and just talking to people this year, that people are pretty happy with the league, with the settings, with some minor
Yeah.
tweaks.
I think it's just getting comfortable with how the other positions score points. I mean, for me, I'm so used to, like running backs, understanding how running backs, wide receivers, and QBs put up points. Like have to watch the game differently and like think about the defensive players differently. And I think just having more time, you get more comfortable with it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now that we've had this league for a few years, people are starting to get it. But I mean, when we drafted, no one hardly did any research uh, on the defensive side of things.
Thank
And
God. I mean, Alec, imagine if you had done research before the draft. Like,
oh man,
we would.
maybe I would have drafted a quarterback before the 7th round.
I also think this league might have folded if even just one of us did research.
Yeah.
Luckily,
Yeah.
nobody did. So we were on a pretty even playing field going forward, and
Yeah, it was experimental back then, and I think it has turned into the perfect league settings. Well, for now.
for now,
Obviously, things change.
a tight end premium. I don't know about it, but we'll see. It did pretty well this year,
For
actually.
everyone listening, tight end premium is the future.
Alec, you only need 3 more votes, I think. Maybe
All right,
4.
I'll
So-
start my campaign early this year.
Okay, so let's see. So this is Todd. I'm going to do kind of a split screen, I think, so we can look at the roster
right.
and also the transcript. Okay, so obviously number 12, Mike
You want to zoom
Cerruti.
in on that PDF just a little bit, Paul?
Yeah,
I've just got that on my other screen.
Yeah,
okay.
that works.
Hopefully it records okay. I have no idea. You probably all you people watching will probably have to put it on your
Yeah,
big
all you
screen.
people watching.
So who else? We're talking about Mike Cerruti in 12th
Yeah, Mike
spot.
Cerruti.
I don't think there's any surprises there. I no, everything they said was about right? Like, yeah, you gotta get
I
rid
mean,
of Aaron
last year
Rodgers.
goes 5-9. Last 2 years combined 12 and 16. He actually, his team, in my opinion, was more middling last year and kind of in the decline this year. Obviously, we're calling it the 12th best roster.
Well, he's made some decisions that are slightly confusing with especially maybe Alec, you could speak to this, the Pollard, Mixon, and then I mean, I think
so
AJ Brown was totally fine, but it's interesting. I mean, Mixon obviously on the decline. He's getting older. How old is he now? Like 27?
yeah, Mixon's 27. Yeah, the guys,
Almost
the
27.
rate my league guys, they don't have the full context that we have,
Right.
and that's why I say like he's in the decline because of the few moves that he made that maybe weren't in the best interest of his team moving forward.
But I think like he was also trying to compete. Like he's definitely a guy who's trying to compete. Like,
exactly.
Which we like, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's good for the league when people think that they can win.
I mean, so the trade that we're talking, of course, is Mixon, Malcolm Brown, Hollywood Brown, and Pollard for Najee Harris, and then this infamous 2023 first.
Hey, what happened to that first?
Yes, we'll get to that later. So, I mean,
I mean that's like a win now trade for a team that I guess, like you said, if you think you're competing, isn't bad, but I don't know. I think there's just a lot of other holes that need to get filled before that.
And especially on
here's
the
the thing:
defensive side.
he was middling last year, right? So if from the perspective that you're a middling team, and what do I need to do to make myself not a middling team, right? It's either a tank or I trade for win now pieces. So maybe that's how a trade like that goes down,
I mean, yeah, I think a lot of our trades could look like this in the future as well, where we think that we are a piece or two away. We make a trade, for win now pieces, and it falls apart on us, and we're gonna get clowned, just like this.
Yeah.
And we look at this and we're like, wow, that was not such a great trade. But at the time, it was fair value. Maybe people don't think it's a trade that should be made, but at the end of the day, it was fair value, according to Q-Trade Cut, of course, which can be manipulated to whatever.
Yeah, I think this tells the whole story, though. We have key additions and key subtractions, which I did actually wish they looked at a little more during the podcast.
Yeah,
because it
definitely could have talked about that a little bit.
Because and this is no hate on the podcast because it was fantastic, but the trades, we didn't have so many. We had actually quite a few off-season trades, more than I was expecting pre-draft trades, but not a ton, nothing to like really talk about. Whereas last year we were making trades left and right that were
Yeah.
fascinating. All of them were fascinating. So, and all of them generated, I'm sure, a lot of discussion amongst everybody in the league. But let's see, key additions: Pollard, AJ Brown, Joe Mixon, Marquise Brown, James Cook through the draft. I don't even know how he got Tyler Boyd.
You don't want to know.
Okay, we'll look it up.
That was the tier down. Or is that? I thought that was like the Noah Fant for somebody, and then
Oh,
Tyler
was
Boyd
Boyd
for
just a throw-in?
yeah. So it
Boyd and
was
Fant for Sutton.
yeah, and he did. Oh, that was the Devin White trade for Sutton.
Oh,
Devin White in a fourth, Sutton, and then
Well,
Sutton into Tyler Boyd and Noah Fant.
if we want to go over all the trades,
we can
you know,
let's not get
yeah,
too
Yeah,
deep
yeah,
into
yeah,
that's
it.
too
yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this looks like you look at these additions and subtractions. It looks like somebody who's going for it, right? So we'll see. Maybe James Cook has a good year. Who knows? I'm not sure. I'm not so optimistic, but I
I will
mean, at
say
least
too,
he
he had some
owns.
injuries last year on his roster. Marquise Brown was AFK for a lot of the year.
Hmm.
Uh, Mike Evans was injured here and there. James Cook going into his second season could be a lot better. So there's some room for optimism.
Yeah, and Pollard could have a big year. Joe Mixon
Exactly.
could totally still have a very. He could have a, he could have a run top 12 year. It's possible.
This
Um,
is the 12th ranked roster, but I could totally see him coming
The,
in 5th through 7th place.
I don't know. The defense is so weak. Like
it's true.
he has one named linebacker on the list.
Yeah, but defense is a little bit easier to
Right.
trade for.
Yeah.
All right,
Is it
moving on.
though? I feel like that many defensive trades haven't happened because people still don't, totally know how to value it.
I
I'm
think,
here,
yeah,
everybody.
you're
Come talk
right.
to me.
People are apprehensive because they don't want to fuck it up. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. You know what?
We'll see.
All right, moving
Moving on.
on to 11. Or is there anything else to talk about? Not really.
I would say to end every team, it'd be interesting to say, okay, is it the 12th worst roster? I agree with that, and then we talk about maybe where they're gonna end next season.
Well, if it was
Interesting.
Orphan, I would be willing to take it over.
I think it's good enough. There's enough pieces there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Also, I
First
have to
surprise.
comment on the sound clip that they played for Mike. That was I was cracking up after that. The ESPN clip. Uh, what was it? Lisa something. I can't remember.
This fantasy football team is awful.
Yeah. Uh, that's how I knew that this podcast that Andrew paid for was gonna be fire. All
Thank
right,
you
moving
again,
on.
Andrew, because
Yes.
great idea. Obviously, it inspired this shittier podcast. Okay. First surprise? 11? Kyle?
The runner-up.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Uh,
expecting it.
I wasn't expecting it this low, but I have long thought that this is a team that could age out pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think what did he have? He has Zeke, and he made those trades for some of the aging running backs, and I think he's just already at that point potentially.
Yeah, I think it's what did the podcast have to say about them
Let's see
specifically?
if we can. Okay, so still. Oh, here. I'm Linda coming from ESPN Sports Network.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's the
okay.
clip.
All right, moving on. Number 11, 8-6. You love to see. Oh, okay. So I loved them talking about the 8-6 team getting to the championship game.
Yeah,
You punch your
Mm-hmm.
ticket because the context they don't know is, of course, that the reason this podcast exists is my suspicion is that the former champion won as the sixth seed, right? Or was he the fifth seed?
he was the sixth seed, I
Sixth
believe.
seed and won on an amazing, amazing game where TJ Watt carried
We
them
did
to the
talk about that.
championship. So they would have loved that.
Yeah,
almost wish we were able to send them. Like I don't even care about the offseason trades. I wish we were able to send them like the state of the league after maybe last year or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, we punching your ticket. I actually think I would like to make a little bit of commentary on the fact that I think people are a little bit too willing to tank in our league because there's a lot of good value right there in the middle. Because honestly, there's not that many good teams, like 4 to 7, 4 to 8. Like everything's like in flux right now.
Yeah, it's kind of wide open at the edge of the playoffs there if you really want to make a push into one of those spots. I don't think you have to pay very much to get to that position. So I mean, and you see, 8-6 makes the playoffs this year, second place. Andrew last year wins the
Yeah.
whole thing. So
Okay, so let's
maybe we'll see some people in the coming years
maybe.
making bigger pushes.
Well,
I think.
let's. I just want to make a comment on the points per game. I mean, we're
Mhm.
looking at 284 for the last year, 283 over the last 2 years. I mean, this is way above, some. I think
Oh yeah,
I
he's been one of the top 4 scorers, I believe, in the
I
last 2 years.
do think the podcast they didn't fully understand the impact that our defensive settings have on our league.
Yeah.
The points scored is immense. The fact that there's 11 defensive IDPs, that there's 11 IDPs is huge for points scored, and for scarcity. Um, because I've seen other IDP leagues that look really fun, but a lot of times they're 2-2-3 or 2-2-2-2. Like they have 7 to 9 defensive players, and I'm sure they're going to have 10 or 11 starters. So our league is just a little bit deeper and scores a lot more points than some of these leagues. So I think there is a difference there. You could really tell when they said that Will Anderson, maybe get him at the end of the third,
Yeah.
which I'm
Please.
pretty sure he's going at the not even tail end, like kind of the middle end of
Yeah, I've
the
heard some
first.
interest in him end of the first.
Yeah.
I can't name my sources.
I don't know what trade would have occurred in the late first, but I think when I look at Kyle's team, I honestly think of his and Shane's teams as pretty similar. Like
I
some
agree.
aging pieces that are pretty competitive still, but I think this is just missing some of the marquee pieces. Like, Prescott isn't a top 5 QB where Mahomes is, and so I think it's he's definitely going to be competitive next year, but I think that cliff is quickly approaching.
Do you think that this team should ride it out for a year, 2 years more, or accept what's coming?
I think he can. I mean, he made the playoffs last year and got to the championship. I think, with these pieces, it's just get to the playoffs and you have a shot.
I mean, I agree. I mean,
Yeah, the podcasters they said they expect performance out of his guys pretty similar to last year, and I think in regards to if you go for it or you sell everything, I think when you have this many pieces that are quote unquote old and productive, you just gotta send it again. Kind of how they were talking about Shane as well, but we'll get to Shane's team later. So, in my opinion, this kind of roster, you gotta just keep pushing for it.
yeah, and they're pretty much saying that, and then also with TJ Watt and a solid linebacking core. Um, yeah, why not? Go for it. I agree, and I also think 11 feels a little too low. I would rather have his
Yeah,
team
I agree.
over many.
Yeah.
So,
This team can win games.
yeah.
And as far as draft capital, uh, he actually has his 25 first. Not all of us can say that.
Yeah, I'm gonna want to keep on a hold on my 26 first, I think, when
I think I will also hold mine.
All right. Anything
Um,
else here?
well, again, I would take it if it was an orphan. That'd be a great team to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I would take this over at least half the teams in the league, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with the 11 rating, and I'll put it closer to 8-6. As far as a roster that I'd be willing to take on.
However, it's not the most fun roster. Like if you were taking a roster, you'd want Sam's roster, for example, or either Sam's rosters. Old just because they're interesting. They
Just go
have young
crazy with
players.
all those draft picks.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Dark Burrow. Let's see. What did they have to say about Jack's team?
If I recall, they they started off, enjoying the initial pieces like Burrow, Wilson,
Hmm.
but then they take a look at the running backs and they're like, none of these guys are starter caliber players, and it's a huge problem for a roster like this.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense, this roster. I mean, he made the playoffs again. Like, it's there for the taking.
That's because it's so easy to make the playoffs in our league.
His defense carried him last year too.
That's true. Defense wins championships, everybody.
Well, you have Burrow, you have Cousins, definitely good for a little bit longer. Dalvin Cook should have been traded 2 years ago. I don't know what else there is to say about this. I mean, Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, like, why are these guys on the roster? Like, they were the moment when they were talking about that, I mean, I'm like, yeah, I've been trying to trade for these guys for quite a bit. So,
Yeah, Jack, if you're listening, we've been trying to reach you. We don't know if you're there.
all right, we'll move on from there. Let's look at his draft capital first. Okay, 107. That'll be interesting. That's probably one of the first No, I mean all the picks are going to be interesting this year, but that's going to be it'll be interesting to see which way he goes. Has both of his first going forward. I mean, he's in a fine spot.
Yeah.
Like, but he needs to make moves. Otherwise, he'll be in just a gradually worsening spot.
Hmm.
So,
It is an interesting roster on the offensive end, because he's got lots of pieces that we've said should have been sold by now. But then there's like Burrow, Wilson. Everybody in the league wants these guys,
And even if
and they're
Jameson
young,
Williams hits his ceiling,
yeah, I mean,
right?
Jamison Williams is sitting there down here at wide receiver 49, which just seems ridiculous. Michael Thomas is definitely dead in the water. Calling that now. I mean, Juju, you could even sell for like probably at least,
Hmm.
I don't know, you can get some draft capital, and draft picks are worth more in our league because you can actually because people actually have to take defensive talent. So, like, even getting, like, I don't know, do you think you get a late second for Juju? Early
I think
third?
that
Uh,
sounds about right.
yeah, that's probably on value.
Like, that's
Um,
like, you don't need Juju. Like, getting a late second's great. Like, getting a high third and a fourth or something. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, Sky Moore's here as well. There's some young. I mean, you can see where he was trying to go with the draft last year, but he didn't follow through he didn't sell some of these guys and Dalvin Cook. I mean, I don't know. I feel like we're repeating ourselves here, but
Yeah. What I will say is, if I was to give advice for this kind of roster on moving forward, like rebuilding, go for it. Like I think you this is a roster that could have traded future draft capital to fill in holes at running back, holes at wide receiver. It's solid enough on defense, like we said. It carried him throughout the year. I think. And what was his position going into the playoffs last year?
it must
It
have
was
been sixth,
sixth, fifth, something like that.
7 and
Like
7.
this this roster could easily be on par with some of the third through fifth tier guys if he made some moves for running backs. I think. I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, league overview. Yeah, he was sixth. Kyle fifth. Zack fourth. You and
And
me first,
I
second.
actually still think there's time to do that. I think Hopkins, while he's not on a team right now, can still be a valuable piece once he finds a team. I think Cooks can still be a valuable team, a valuable piece for a team on a championship run. Uh,
Yeah, they're gonna be valuable pieces on the championship team that maybe eventually trades for them. Like, he should trade them to a championship team, I think.
yeah, that's one option for sure.
That's probably the better option. Okay. Let's try. Okay, humongous melon heads. Probably. Wow, 2-12. I forgot how
Well, you
bad.
really went for a take last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be worth it. It was interesting. They were talking about Bijan or not. I mean, obviously you're trading. Look at this trade. I mean, they didn't seem to like this trade very much. 208 and a 405.
I mean, that's just an insurance move, and it's probably an overpay, but
I'll take
it's
the
not.
picks every day of the week.
Yeah.
But it's like you say, it's an insurance play or insurance. I don't know. You said pay or play. Uh, he's going to be drafting Bijan, right? So
Yeah.
it's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, it was interesting that they're considering the possibility of AR, but I just don't.
I
I,
don't think so.
yeah,
I
I
didn't
don't think
like
so
that at
either.
all.
It just depends how deep of a rebuild you're in. I mean, he was 2-12 last year, and it's, the generic argument is like, is the running back still going to be valuable by the time your team is actually competitive?
And I agree with this argument. But I don't think the way to go about it is draft AR one overall.
Right.
I think it's trade the first pick overall and try to get the second, third, fourth pick. Uh, you know, capitalize on the value of the 101 while getting the piece that you need. Uh,
What do we think on their? Okay, so we had the Jordan Love trade, obviously 109 Jordan Love. I like the trade for Austin personally. However, I also think it was a very fair trade, fair value. They seemed also very split on it. Alec, opinions?
I'm gonna agree with. Sorry, what was their take? They were split, right?
They were
Yeah,
split. They
they
were
were.
split.
Yeah. So I think uh, if I didn't need a QB, I'm not paying the 109 in price for Jordan Love. But if I do need a QB, like Austin's team does, uh, I'm willing to make that payment. And seeing as Austin's going to be drafting a quarterback with the 102, and 109 is maybe not exciting Austin very much, great price. So I think it's a team by team type thing, and the value absolutely is fair. That's one thing. Uh, but as far as I think it's a need situation more than anything.
Austin, you're the person in the trade. What do
I
you?
mean, that was pretty much it. I think they and the guys in the podcast agreed. Jordan Love carries more risk in the trade than who I could probably have gotten at the 109. But I mean, it's super flex. If he hits, he's going to increase in value more than the person I would draft at the 109. And so, like Alex said, looking at my roster, I have, Watson and then just a couple of these other middling QBs. I mean, really Garoppolo, Howell, and then, whatever happens at the 102. And so I don't know if you can ever have too many quarterbacks in super flex.
No, I
And
mean,
if
I'm
they if
probably
they all
trading.
if they all hit, I'm gonna look to trade some of them.
Yeah, I'm looking to trade for Garoppolo again, I think, for another
Yeah.
second or so. So I'm ready.
Yeah, I
Um,
think you want to have three viable QBs on your roster, and that's what this move does.
all right, let's move along. Obviously, you have Herbert. It's kind of like really, it sounds like Daniel Jones. He's believing in Daniel Jones. I like that. Um, as far as wide receivers, I mean, look, this roster is not bad at all. You got Mark Andrews, you got T. Higgins, TJ Watt. You got it. Obviously, defense needs a lot of work, but what's the draft cap situation? 101, 109, 201, 301. Like you're getting good picks off of those, and you of course own your own picks along with one of the Alex picks. So not bad.
Yeah, this is a roster that actually has some nice pieces on it, I think, and going to be getting Bijan. You can see that it's the worst running back room in the league, but very very quickly it's going to become a top half of the league running back room.
All right, Shane. Been one of the best teams in the league last 2 years, but never been quite enough. But you have Mahomes. You don't really have a second QB. That's kind of what they were talking about. I mean, you traded for Henry, you got Eckler.
It's like we were
Cooper
saying.
Kupp getting
It's
hurt is a big blow to the team.
yeah, that was a big blow last year for sure.
Go ahead, Alec.
I was gonna say, it's like we were talking about. This is another team like Kyle's where they've got a bunch of old productive assets. So do you make the push again, or do you sell? And what the podcasters are saying, I completely agree with. Um, these are elite production players. Shane's team easily could have won last year or this year. It's the nature of fantasy that it's, you never know who's going to win. And he absolutely could have been a winner either of the last 2 years with this roster. I think he could easily be a winner this year.
So keep it together at least one more year, take it year by year. Yeah, that's kind of what I mean, it's a good roster. It's always been scary. You don't want to face him in the playoffs. You don't want to face Mahomes ever.
Yeah.
Tom Brady, is he coming back?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he has some elite defensive players as well. I think some of the better rosters in the league, you start seeing the elite defensive pieces, like Myles Garrett. He's the kind of guy that can score a 40-point game for you in the playoffs and totally flip a matchup on its head. And then his pieces around that are all good enough. So this is a roster that I'm confident is still going to be good 1 or 2 years down the road.
Okay. Okay, so our newcomer, that's College Fund. What was it? Todd? Todd. Okay.
Todd.
Sorry, Todd. So Todd seems very, very into it. He inherited a very good team to inherit. I mean, obviously it went 3-11, but I really loved the shout out that they. Let's see if we can. Okay. How do you feel about this team? Like, it's kind of future. I mean, what a great orphan to pick up. To pick up. Yeah, it's the dream. Like, look at this transcription.
They have no sex.
So I think they said it has no picks, no players.
I think what the transcribe was wrong. I think they said sexy players.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's true. Normally, and this is what we're trying to avoid with the extra buy-in, that you can have a little bit of wiggle room. Like, we can give somebody $100 to play with, essentially, to play with for a year, because usually orphans are going to be shitty. This was not. I mean, Justin Fields, Breece Hall, who are there a little bit more down on than I was expecting. But you have Miles Sanders, Madison coming into a starting role. I mean, also, like, the wide receivers are really good. I mean, look, Van Jefferson, Russell Gage, some of the lead talent in the league.
Yeah, it's a shame that this team doesn't have one of the best rosters to own in fantasy football on its roster anymore.
Best receivers.
Are you talking about Jamar Chase?
That might be who I'm talking about.
Well, you also have some guys like Bellinger and Freiermuth. I mean, Freiermuth's obviously cool. But
I see what this has become.
Yeah, well, this is what it's going to become as we get further down this. Alec, you'll have your time too in due course. But also, you have really good picks, right? So 104, 110, 204, 207, a lot of firsts in the future. I mean, what do you think? Like, how do you think this?
Most glaring weakness is second QB. Don't know how Sam Darnold got on the roster. But with the 104,
former owner really wanted him.
I mean, I have to imagine the 104 is an obvious QB.
It's going to be one of the QBs.
Yeah,
whichever one falls to 104.
It's just like it's a glaringly obvious, right? And Todd has played Dynasty before, right? Or at least he's played.
From what I understand, he plays fantasy every year like we do. He's big on DFS, the daily fantasy. Not sure he's ever done Dynasty. Maybe a few keeper leagues, but
I mean, if he's doing DFS, then I have no worries.
Todd definitely gonna take it seriously, and I think he's gonna turn the roster around.
Yeah, and
building
we're
a
happy to have
contender.
Todd for sure. I mean, I love Sam Kohansky. I love Sam Cerruti as well. But of course, the roster and the moves weren't always ideal. So there are some things that have to be done. But I mean, honestly, this could be a contender
I
very
know,
quickly.
like he's got even his defense with Hutchinson, Jordan Brooks, like he's got some good
Yeah.
guys on defense too.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see how this goes. Let's get to some trades, honestly. So okay, we got to talk about Zack for a bit for sure. Um,
Do we?
do we?
Kidding.
Good roster. Definitely expecting him to. Wow, did he really only go 8-6? I forgot about that.
He got very unlucky. He
Yeah,
had the third most points in the league, I believe, last year. Maybe even second most
Yeah, I mean
points.
he's at
he
almost
was
300
really
points
close
a
to
game,
me. I remember.
299 points a game.
I think that I edged him out slightly just towards the end of the year, but honestly, great roster, huge turnaround year one to year two.
Yeah,
Very impressive. I thought he should tank year one to year
Yeah,
two.
we were all saying a year ago today probably. Oh, this is a roster that is going to be bottom half of the league.
He made some
Uh,
very clever moves. Waddle, of course, Derwin James, which I ridiculed at the time, but honestly, good value. I'm
and
not
then
sure actually. I think fair value.
yeah,
Um, but
the running backs turned it around too with Barkley and Jacobs coming back strong.
absolutely.
Now has
So,
one of the strongest running back rooms, if not the strongest.
I
and
think it is the strongest. I think Dobbins a year back from ACL tear, he could be pushing, top 12 running back on the year. He didn't even really have access to him last year, and you could argue that Zack had the best running back room. Um, so there's definitely optimism on this roster outside of what we've already seen.
yeah, and he had the trade for TJ Edwards and Sanborn, which obviously we weren't really expecting much more from Sanborn. But
Mm-hmm.
honestly, like he's a solid running back or solid linebacker, so he could, if there's an injury, you kind of have insurance for TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards, I think, will produce hugely this year, in a similar role that he had last year on the Eagles. The Bears are definitely going to need him. So I think you'll get he's definitely a 130 plus tackle kind of guy.
I think
So
like go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just thinking like the defense is solid, the good really. The offense looks dangerous. Obviously, Russell Wilson's not a guy you want to count on.
Exactly. I think that's what the podcast guys called out too. Is if Russell Wilson doesn't turn it around this year, then I think this team's the future looks a lot weaker because his team's too good to get a high draft pick to get one of the top QBs, which means he's probably going to have to acquire one through a trade, and those guys aren't cheap to pay up for.
Right, and well, that's actually not even an option. He doesn't have his 23 or 24 picks, so he's waiting till 25 to have a first rounder.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you could
So
trade 25, 26, a couple of seconds, 25, 26 second. I mean, if you really want to go for it.
sure, but as far as getting a QB out of the draft in the next 2 years, not an option.
True. Yeah.
But I think getting a cheap, the rest of his roster's strong enough that if he gets just a cheap QB2, fill it in,
And
then
Russell
it's
Wilson could
still
be that cheap
right.
QB too. It
Yeah.
could be the case. Garoppolo, I'm sure you would trade for like a second. Well, maybe I don't know, but you can get second tier QBs for not exorbitant prices. Third
What do
tier
you think about
QBs.
the receivers? I feel like I mean, I don't know. The top three, I guess, are good,
I like Christian Kirk more than
but
most, I think.
yeah,
And then I mean Waddle speaks for himself. And I
I'm
don't
a
know,
big Smith
Devon.
fan. I think at 14, that's lower than I have him. Um, so I really like his wide receiver room up until you hit Allen Robinson. Then it kind of goes to shit.
Yeah, you're looking a little bit more suspect in the flex spots where you do have to rely on these running backs. So I'm not sure where he'll go from there, but I mean, obviously it's already a really good team. So um, any improvements would honestly put him right up into like Alec territory, don't you think? At least for next year.
Yeah, I think like I said, J.K. Dobbins, that production being added, I think Wilson could easily have a better season than last year with Sean Payton in the mix.
That's true. I mean, that is the big thing, isn't it? Okay, we'll see. He could have a monster year next year, but yeah, I
Yeah,
think
so
that
it says the sixth best roster to own, but
no
I don't know
way.
if there's.
No, yeah.
Third,
I mean, maybe. I mean,
fourth.
would you rather have Austin's roster or Zach's roster? I'd rather have
I don't.
Austin's roster.
They're different.
They're very different.
They
I
are
would
different.
I would have more
Going
fun.
into this year, I would rather have Austin's roster.
I'd have more fun
Uh,
with Austin's roster. I'm not sure if I would want to win. Like, I think maybe Zach's roster wins more money over the next couple years.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I would take, and then Sam's roster just has so many picks. So, Cerruti. Now we only have one Sam, but we still have two Zachs. So, all right, let's move on. We are 40 minutes in, so we're actually making pretty good time. Eating W's, number 5. I mean, realistically, yes, but it just doesn't feel like it, does it?
Yeah.
It
It's
doesn't
just
feel like it because
the
he's
zero
always
running
been.
back.
Go ahead, Austin. Sorry.
No, I was just saying the zero running back is what drags it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, Pickett for whatever you believe in. And then you own your picks. I mean, obviously you made the trade, but St.
I mean,
Brown,
look, every
Metcalf, DJ Moore,
every
like
dynasty roster always has. I feel like it's kind of been said a lot in dynasty podcasts. You build around QB and wide receiver, and then you fill the rest in.
Yeah.
And from that standpoint, the Adcock's roster is primed for that kind of roster construction. So maybe now it's time to get those running backs.
the problem is that he can be difficult to trade with. So I wonder if he's able to actually make those trades or not.
Yeah, well, and here's another thing. We have a trade in front of us here, the 108
Hmm.
and the 25 first for the 106, which I did agree with the podcasters that great value play. You're only going down basically 2 spots to acquire an entire first. Um, Obviously that first is still going to be the 12th pick, so is
Oh,
what it is.
Hmm.
But the 106 is going to likely be Jackson, Smith, and Jigba or Gibbs. Gibbs fills one of those needs at running back potentially. So I don't know how I feel about that trade in the current year.
that is true. Yeah.
I mean, okay, so yes, that's true. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure that Zach isn't as high on Gibbs as the Lions
Sure.
are, as the rest of us are. So it makes sense to move down from his perspective. I mean, the fact that he was able to get the value he did out of this trade while also not wanting Gibbs is pretty wild. So he really did a great job
Yeah.
with this trade. I
Yeah,
got
I
I gotta say.
it's a great value trade.
Yeah, and it's not even saying that this is like a bad trade for Cerruti, Sam Cerruti, because we have two Cerrutis. This is it's the price you pay to move up in the draft when we know exactly the players that we're wanting to draft. So if you really, he knows who's going to be there at 6 because of the QB situation and because of Bijan, and so yeah, if you want to get your guys, I guess you have to pay the price.
Yeah. Just in the running back hole, I feel like in our league it's hard to get running backs in this position because all the contenders I feel like already have the aging running backs. And so you can't get an aging running back for cheap from a contender because that's the piece that they want. And then all the rebuilding teams I feel like have the young, promising running backs.
I
Maybe
do.
Mike's team is the only one that, like with Mixon and Pollard, that if he's not trying to contend this year, would have pieces that don't fit. But that's just the sense I get with our league right now.
That is an interesting trade pairing that you put. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I also would like to say that, I mean, I think this is the year that one of the teams that we think is contending. I don't think Alec's team. I believe in my team, but it could be my team, Shane's team, Kyle's team, even Zach's team. I think any one of us could have everything go wrong, and the NFL moves quickly, and we become a selling team quicker than you'd expect. So I
Yeah,
know that's going to happen
completely.
eventually. I'm curious when it does.
Yeah, and I think that sort of situation um, changes the market. Um, like we've been saying, I think you could easily look at uh, maybe someone like Kyle who sees he has an aging roster, and I know he hates having so many old running backs on his team. He's probably willing to trade an aging running back for the right price to a team like this. So you might see something like that happen if his team doesn't start off hot, or vice versa with Shane. So could be a new market this year for
I
the
think
running
this is going
backs.
to be the most interesting trade market yet, especially since we've all gotten a better sense of our defensive values and that we're going to have some more shakeups in contender and rebuilding status. All right. Okay, so he's got plenty of picks. Anyways, let's move on to. Oh yes. Okay, so finally, one of our teams. My team, number 4. Um,
Surprising at 4.
Surprising at 4, yes. Although on a lot of calculators and rankings and stuff, I've been starting to rank lower than, for example, often Sam Cerruti's team, um, but below Austin's team.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at the calculators for since our league was created, and
Shocker.
you've pretty much shocker. You've pretty much always been 1 or 2, and I wouldn't be surprised if you're 1 or 2 still on some sites. Uh, so I'm gonna disagree with the evaluation of 4, but that's their algorithm. That's not what the podcasters were necessarily saying. Maybe.
Yeah, and they talked very pretty long and hard about the 12th ranked QB room, which they believed was
Oh
on the
yeah,
low
that's
end.
I agree as well.
I
What
mean,
are your thoughts?
so I mean, Stafford, I have no idea. I actually am shocked Stafford's higher ranked than the other two QBs. And I think that's what's really driving down the ranking. I mean, Derek Carr's, I think, in a very good situation in New
Yeah.
Orleans. Kyler Murray, obviously, he's being ranked down. Is this like dynasty rank? Because I just
I
don't
know, there's no
understand
way.
the
Yeah,
QB
I didn't
22.
notice that.
Yeah, because like I feel like Kyler, I mean, he's definitely still worth.
oh no one's trading Derek Carr for Kyler Murray straight up
Yeah, this is
and
it's
getting Kyler
ridiculous.
Murray.
So I think Kyler Murray is definitely way undervalued here, which definitely brings down the ranking. I know that people don't like Kyler. Nobody does. It's very clear. I don't even like Kyler. I just traded for him because I needed a QB last year, and he was the one that everybody disliked. So Austin was willing to trade him,
Yeah,
even though I had to trade a ton for him still. Um, it really shows how difficult it is to trade for a top tier or even above average QB in our league. Um, so I think that brings me down a lot. I mean, the second running back, yes, obviously is a huge issue. I have a bunch of random garbage that I hope will produce enough to fill that second spot.
Well,
So
your strategy has always been like just get a bunch of shit and maybe some of it will stick, right?
yeah, I mean, Elijah Mitchell did for a while.
Yeah, there you go.
Jeffrey Wilson's did for a bit. I think this year is the year of Devin Singletary somehow getting me 900 or 1,000 yards. So we'll
okay.
see how that goes. Should we talk? We could talk a little bit about the trade, which they
Yeah,
seem
I'm
to be in
curious.
favor on my side. I thought it was a little more on the
I
even
know. Well,
side.
yeah, I think that comes with them undervaluing the linebacker position. I mean, Nick Bolton is a beast, but I like it for both of you guys. Aging receiver that gets off Sam's team. You know, I think Calvin Ridley's could put up big numbers this year, but that's who knows, and who knows for how long. He's already 29. So kind of get an aging piece off of Sam's team, who's in full rebuild mode, and gets a good
Is he
young defensive
29?
player. Yeah, I'm pretty
Oh, he's
sure
28.
He's not young. He came into the NFL quite old as well. Let's look him up.
I think
he's
there's
28. Yeah,
He's
so
28 and a half. Okay.
he did 4 years in college and he started college late. Um, so yes, he is 28 years old, and it's like how long can you have elite production? How long or how long can you be away from football and then come back to your old production? That's another question.
I mean,
Uh,
realistically, too, he had 1 year of elite production. So
right.
it's a
But what I will
risk.
say is that maybe he doesn't have as much wear and tear on his body as other wide receivers his age. Maybe he's not. Maybe his body isn't quite like a 28-year-old receiver. Is all I'm saying. Whether he can get back to his old form is another question.
Yeah, it's a big gamble. I mean, but the reality of things is, yeah, Nick Bolton's extremely valuable. He's going to be putting up numbers for a long time, but it's easier to replace linebacker numbers than wide receiver numbers. So, it'll be interesting to look back on this one.
Mm-hmm.
I am excited about my fifth round picks though, because I intend to draft another John Mechie because I drafted him in the fifth round last year, and I'm turning him into a 2.08 next year as well. That's all I have to say. Other than that, you're really seeing that the defensive rosters are starting to really take shape here. I mean, I think basically Alec and me, we have the best two defensive player, sets of defensive players in the league. And trading Bolton doesn't hurt as much when you have guys like Nakobe Dean,
Yeah,
Troy Anderson, David Long. So a lot of these guys will be able to give me points. I mean, even if Jordan, see, this is why this is part of their algorithm issue. Like Jordan Hicks, no, he shouldn't be worth more than a little bit, but he's going to be able to put up 100 plus tackles and fill the stat sheet in other areas. And I know there's a lot of other linebackers on other teams that
and like you have
can
Isaiah
do so.
Simmons who has the DB designation, which is a
Well,
cheat
that's
Yeah.
code.
one thing that they missed.
Yeah, and I don't fault them for this at all because, yes, our league's just a little bit weird. But yes, they were talking about how my safeties were trash. Yeah, they are. However, Isaiah Simmons will be playing as a DB. Kenny Moore, obviously, will be playing as a DB as well. So I just have to piece together maybe two or three other safeties. And some of these guys have enough talent and enough draft capital and are young and can improve their games. So I'm not too concerned. And I think a trade can happen as well.
Yeah, no,
We can.
in my opinion, this was the best defense in the league last year, and I think even though you lose Nick Bolton, I think there's enough depth at linebacker that it doesn't hurt you too bad. And I think even without him, you're probably vying for best defense in the league still. So I think the roster is ready to go for it all again for many years to come, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely will be. I'm not sure many years to come. I think I'm kind of looking at a 2 year window maybe, but I'll be obviously trying to extend it as long as possible because I am a big believer, and depending on how our league reacts, I think just making the playoffs is quite enough, especially with some boom bust guys in your defensive end spots.
Yep.
I mean, it might be just bias based on, year one, but it worked once, it can work again. All right, Austin, Ghost 3879, worst team name in the league.
I take that. I take that.
Is there a player you're hoping to draft that you're going to name your team after?
We shall see.
Confidential information.
Okay, let's talk about draft capital
I don't
first.
like guns, so
Don't like guns. So we have the 102. I think we know which way that's going. 211. Who did you get that from? Is that mine?
that's Kyle.
That's
That was
Kyle's
the
pick.
Zeke trade.
Okay.
Yeah, the first and second.
302. That should be interesting as well. And then you own your own picks going forward, along with owning my
Your
pick
25.
in 2025,
Correct.
which could be sweet. We'll see.
I know. We'll see.
Also my second, which also could be sweet. Um, then let's talk roster. So you have Love. You'll probably be drafting a QB. You have Deshaun Watson for what that's worth. Etienne, Akers, DeAndre Swift. What did you think of their assessment of your roster?
I'm trying to remember everything they said. I mean, I think I agreed for the most part. I have a lot of upside guys that could increase in value, and that's kind of what they said. Like, I feel like I'm on the verge of going for it if some of these guys turn the corner and start producing. And I think that's pretty much what they said.
Yeah, it's a hard agree for me. I remember them talking about Swift and Javante particularly. These are two guys that could easily outperform where they're being ranked in their system right now. And if your running back room fills out, your wide receiver room is already fantastic with Jefferson, London, Pittman, then maybe Elijah Moore turns into something more. No pun intended. I think there's potential for this to be the best offensive team in our league if the cards play right. At which point, I think the defense is probably what needs to get filled in to become that contender. So I think it'll be interesting with your roster because if you do decide to flip that switch, how fast can you fill in all the defensive guys that you need to become that competitive roster? Because I truly do believe that the offense is where it needs to be.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I think this is one of the teams, along with Sam, that really should be trying to go for it this year. Like, I don't think you need to be trading everything to go for it, but like you can definitely sneak into those and sixth seed, fifth seed rosters in the playoffs, and then from there on, I mean, it looks great. I do
Yeah.
want to talk slightly. Just I know nobody else will care about this, but Jamin Davis had a really good end to the year after I traded him. So I'm looking forward to seeing his progress as a former first round pick with insane athletic ability.
Yeah, I actually maybe I don't give the defense enough credit. Linebacking core of Tremaine Edmonds, Jamin Davis, and Quincy Williams is actually not so bad.
And then, what are we thinking on Thibodeau?
I'm a big Thibodeau guy. I know Austin's a big Thibodeau guy.
All right, I'm trying to get our first guest ever on the podcast to join, and let's see.
Oh, is that so?
Let's see if we can get him on. So, do we have anything else to talk about for Austin's spot? We have the trade. We've talked about it at length already. Seems really solid. I think having several QBs in is good.
I mean, now that we're looking
whole,
at this roster.
Go ahead. I'll just say my whole process with that trade was basically what one of the hosts talked about. It was risk insulation. Like those QBs up at the top all have their question marks now, and I feel like with Love, Sam Howell, Garoppolo, and then a fourth QB that I will draft, they're all going to have question marks. And if there's a 50% chance that, or even a 25% chance that each one pans out, then I hit on at least one of them. Is like my hope.
Seems like good process to me. I know that Austin's always had a good process through the years. We played for over a decade together, redraft and now Dynasty. He has yet to win any Dynasty league.
Any
good process. No wins.
But great process, no win yet. We await his first win. He does deserve it. I say that 100% honestly, I promise.
I was just gonna say I completely agree on the evaluation of this being the third best roster in our league. I'm taking this roster above, like I was saying earlier, Zack's every single time.
Are you taking it above mine, or are you taking it above Sam's?
I think it's a matter of opinion with yours and Austin's. Your team can win the next 2 years, Paul, but Austin's team has potential to make a dent this year and then maybe be a monster in a few years. So that the reason I really like this roster is I think it can be a monster in a few years.
All right, there we
have it. That's my take.
Let's move on to Sam Cerruti's team. Seahorses Forever. A lot of controversial takes on this one. Maybe not so controversial overall. A lot of trades. Clearly trade happy. We would love to have him on to discuss the trades. And here he is. Okay. Whoa. Sam, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Okay, so we have Alec and Austin on. And we welcome Sam Cerruti. We've been talking about the 12 through 3 team. So we've talked about my team and Austin's team right before this, and we just got to your team.
Perfect timing.
So basically what we're doing today is kind of talking about, we're half copying what the other podcasters are doing, but we're trying to talk about what they said and what we think that we agreed with, what we disagreed with. What did you think about the fairly brutal roasting of one of the trades? I don't think they hated the other trades nearly as much. In fact, they quite liked the Algier. How do you say that? Algier.
I always say Algier.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I think Algier.
Algier and Warren they liked. I think they were Honestly, we were talking about the Mechie Bolton trade, and because they seem to undervalue defense heavily,
Mhm.
which is why I think that they were a little bit more on my side for that trade, whereas we were talking about earlier in the podcast about that trade being a little bit more fair. Um, and when we were talking about Zach's team, we were talking about preferring. Actually, I don't think we did say we were preferring one side or the other on Zach's trade with the Gallup and the sixth for the eighth and the future 25 first from Alec. It was just kind of a situational one. However,
Mhm.
the most interesting trade of the year so far definitely is going to be the Olave Pitts and the third round pick for Robinson, Komet, the 103, of course. I don't know why I buried the lead there, and a second. Sam, thoughts?
I mean, it was definitely a lot of value going out of my team for sure with Pitts and Olave. I think relatively speaking, both those are kind of seen as generational talents. Pitts being as young as he is and is having, almost a rookie. Was that the record-breaking rookie year for Pitts, or is Ditka still considered the record keeper? Do you
Ditka
guys
still
know?
has the record.
Yeah,
Pitts barely came short.
Yeah, I mean, and
I
Pitt
mean,
scored up one touchdown. I mean, I don't know. What did
yeah,
Ditka? How many touchdowns did Ditka score that year?
no idea. All I know is
12
that
touchdowns, almost 1,100 yards. Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Anyways, sorry.
So, anyways,
Continue.
coming off that season, I know Pitts was coming in as kind of tight end one, like unanimously, and then this past season, granted with Mariota and with the Falcons offense, it was very, run heavy and kind of a pedestrian offense from a passing standpoint with Mariota kind of throwing a lot of checkdowns and, them heavily prioritizing the run. Um,
And we're not really anticipating that changing this year either, are we?
no. But at the same time, I could definitely see how Pitts is still seen as kind of a generational talent. At this point, he's being ranked kind of still within that top 5 tight end range. So, my thoughts with Pitts was, I know that Alec really valued Pitts, and was hoping. I mean, Alec had sent trades earlier in the season for Pitts straight out for the 103 or what would be the 103 at the time. It wasn't necessarily the 103 right when we were talking about it, but I think Alec very much knew that I wanted the 103 and was looking to get as much value out of it as he could.
Yeah. Here's my take on the entire trade. Um, so we like Sam was saying, we'd been talking about it for quite some time. The 103 prior to the combine had quite a bit of hype around it, and I think at the time I was saying like I'm not doing Olave for 103 straight up. Like months before the trade occurred. Um, so we kind of get to this point where I need Olave and another piece for the 103, and I'm not quite sure which pieces ended up being too much in those specific talks. So we kind of ended on Pitts being that piece, and I think you're a little low on Pitts, and I was expecting an overpay for the 103,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of what happened. I wouldn't say it's a gross overpay, but it was an overpay, and it ends up looking maybe worse than it is because there was an assumption that in order to get the 103, it has to be an overpay.
Yeah, I mean, look, like from an outside perspective, I didn't love the trade. I did think it was a little bit of an overpay to get to the 103. But, and I've said this to Sam before, and I'm going to say it again, like that trade can look a lot different after we get that rookie year in, and we can
And
see what's out of, who is it going to be, Bryce Young or Stroud or AR, whoever it is, like they could prove us all completely wrong.
here's
Yeah, and
another
I mean,
interesting tidbit before we continue is if you look at dynasty startups right now, AR and Bryce Young are going around like in a 12-team league, the 204 to 202 sometimes, whereas Olave and Pitts are going closer to the start of the third round, end of third round for Pitts in that case. So if you're talking in terms of startup values, you're potentially getting a guy that is at the back end of the first round, which it's not easy to get those guys on your team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I think QB is very much king in our league, as we've seen. People are willing to pay quite a lot for QBs or prospect QBs. So in this instance, I kind of saw AR and Bryce Young and even maybe CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud is a little bit different than Bryce Young and AR in terms of value in Dynasty at this time. But it's like what you would pay for potentially Burrow or for Tua or Trevor Lawrence or someone in that range that any of
as
these
somebody
players can
who's
break
trying to
into.
trade for some of these guys, I can tell you that, and someone who has traded for a top tier QB, I guess we could quibble on top tier, but if for the people in our league, because I know this podcast is obviously aimed at 12 people and 12 people only. If you're not using Keep Trade Cut, you should. However, also, obviously the valuations aren't great always, but the trade calculator, it seems that you need to overpay by like 5,000 or 6,000. That's usually like maybe a first round pick, a mid first round pick, or maybe more to acquire a top QB. I think that's about the price. And that's a lot of value. So
I will say, I immediately after this trade, I mean, I love making trades, right? So I immediately tried flipping Olave and Pitts for some of these other elite QBs around the league, and it wasn't anywhere near enough. So that just shows you how much an elite guy costs. If two supposed top tier youthful talents don't get it done.
Yeah,
all right.
I mean, we're just kind of it's showing how much our league values the quarterback, and how much it would cost to potentially move. So in my mind, it's like, do I either draft one of those players that's going to go on to be top 5, maybe top 10 quarterback, or do I try to trade into that? And I felt like the path of least resistance, and maybe the trade indicated that it was maybe a little bit more resistance than I had thought, but I do believe that given how this draft class was touted in terms of its talent, that those quarterbacks could potentially reach that level. So that was kind of my thinking behind the trade. And then also, I've had success with scouting good tight ends in the past, and I kind of saw Pitts as a potential. Yeah, I saw Pitts as a potential, player where it's like, okay, like Pitts at this time is extremely valuable, and I know that I could potentially get a tight end that won't necessarily produce at the same level as Pitts, but would be a good replacement value just from the fact that I've been able to find some good tight ends over the years of fantasy. So
I do believe that Sam is going to come out with a great tight end somehow, some way. So
yeah.
Let's look at the rest of the roster.
Let's move on.
So we have lots of interesting trades. We've talked about them mostly. Josh Allen, I mean, we got some good running backs, but it's kind of it falls off, right? So is the priority like what were they talking about? I mean, mostly I think they were talking about your picks. You still have some running back.
They were talking about picks. Yeah, I thought they kind of faded me on the running back. Honestly, I feel like my running backs, at least from what I've seen on Keep Trade Cut and from even their ratings, it was like Ramondre's running back 10 this year. Kenneth Walker's running back 15, which I feel like is kind of low for him. I know he's got Charbonnet in the backfield with him, but he considered last year definitely within that top 10. So after listening to that podcast, I was kind of like, these are two good running backs on the team. And then, through the draft, it's not guaranteed that my pick at 105 would be Gibbs, but if I
mean, I think
put
that
Gibbs.
it's a pretty good chance. Yeah. I mean,
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
Todd's taking a QB. He needs a
yeah,
QB.
I mean, we were talking about his roster earlier. Of course, he has Fields, and that's nothing behind Fields, right? Unless you're really going to
Yeah.
believe in Sam
Yeah.
Darnold to take over a starting spot somewhere. So
Yeah.
it's
But
Starting over Trey Lance.
The 105 and 106, like potentially the top 2 out of the 3 skill position players from the draft.
hmm I mean, it's looking spicy, right? So we have 103. Let's talk about the picks because they're the most interesting, right? 103, 105, and I agree. I think that your running backs are, it's a really good base. Also, there are some interesting wide receivers in here, so we'll see how it goes. But obviously, everything's about the draft. 103, 105, 106, 111, 112, 202. I mean, it's 10 picks within the first 2 rounds, and you have some third-round picks even too. That's not even talking about the future. I mean, you have two picks, 2 firsts next year. Are you planning on trading any of your picks, or do you think that you don't want to? I don't want you to give anything away, but are you making all your picks? Have you been scouting, watching film like crazy?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent the last month, much to my fiance's dismay, looking at fantasy football and watching videos and scouting and things like that. So I think I have a good idea of what I want to do in the first round. Granted, I'm going to kind of see how things play out, especially in those later picks at 111, 112. But my plan prior to that and why I moved up to the 106 is because I see a clear tier gap between 106
Absolutely.
and then 107, 108, 109. I think JSN, given the level of prospect that has come out of Ohio State recently, with Olave, Garrett Wilson, for him to be a teammate and to kind of be distinguished among those teammates, kind of to me indicates that he might be on the level of them. Granted, I didn't love the spot that he landed in Seattle, but talent wins out in those situations, and I think JSN is going to be fantastic. So that was kind of the impetus behind wanting to kind of jump from the 108 to the 106. And yeah, I had to pay the additional first, but I think it's something that if JSN works out, we'll look back at it and say that was worthwhile to trade up that way. So
I
mean, you have first to spare too. So and like Alex said, like his team's definitely the most stable. I know Alec was saying it to brag, but yeah, it's a decent chance of that being. I mean, that's definitely going to be a 10 through 12, 9 through 12 sort of pick. So and
I pretty much saw it as a second rounder in a way, where it's like late first, almost like early. It's still the first round, but it's going to be late first, more likely than that. So I felt comfortable with that. And then, the 111, 112, as I said, we'll kind of see what shakes out. If there's a really good defensive player that drops to the back of the first, that could be the move, or it could be shore up some running back depth.
Who are those really good defensive players that we might be?
I think you need to leave Anderson and go to the third round.
I think only really Will Anderson is that
guy. All right. Let's move on. Last but not least, the team we love to hate, the Manchester City of our
we're calling me Manchester City? Okay.
Well, because we hate you so much. All right. Let's talk about it. Football is life.
They mispronounced that. I was a little disappointed.
Is that ever going to change, that name, or are you going to keep it?
I mean, I think it's suited me well. Football is life. All I fucking do is digest fantasy football, and I've done well under the name. Got to keep it, I think.
Okay, so now that we're here, it's about time to end the podcast, so we don't hear Alec talk anymore. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's. Alec, you want to talk about? Well, we talked about your trade. We had this other trade. Okay, not much to talk about there. What do you have in the? Do you believe in Trey Lance? What's QB2 looking like?
Well, if we talk about what their concerns with my roster are, because they had a lot of nice things to say about my roster, it's definitely the QB. Jared Goff easily could not have a job in the next year or two. I don't have any draft picks to put towards quarterbacks, so if that happens, or what they say, an injury happens, and I have to rely on Lance, it could be a rough situation. That being said, I'm still a massive Trey Lance believer, so it didn't really sound like they were. And I think Lance is pretty divisive in the Dynasty community right now on whether people believe in him or not. So I think if he does land, that's a scary QB room. Two dual threat QBs that can put up a lot of points, but it's still big if.
I mean, yeah, and this is like the one quibble you can have is that, yeah, okay, the second QB is looking a little rough. I mean, what were they saying? Something catastrophic could happen. I mean, something catastrophic could happen to anybody's QB.
It could, yeah.
They're just trying
They're kind of saying that without the draft picks and with all of my depth being in defense, if there are injuries on offense, maybe it's not so quick to turn your defensive depth into draft capital or players that you need on the other side of the ball.
I mean, that's true, but I know, Austin, you're saying that it's harder to trade for defense than we think, but we have had a lot of trades for defense where defensive players have been the centerpieces. Maybe not for the top tier guys, only a few, like Roquan moved, obviously recently Nick Bolton moved, but smaller trades have happened. I do think it's possible, especially coming into year 3.
Yeah, if
players.
Let's say Lance never starts another game in the NFL. Let's say Goff gets replaced in a year or two, and let's say Roquan and Parsons are still the IDP assets that they are. I wonder how easy it would be to flip one of those guys into a viable option, not even a top tier option, but like top 20 QB. I like to think it wouldn't be that hard to make happen.
I think it'd be hard, but I think it would be possible. I think you'd have to flip for picks and then.
I mean, we're talking about the best of the best, right?
No, I'm talking like QB 15, QB 20.
Sure. No, I'm saying on the defensive side of the ball,
right?
We're talking about the best of the best, and you're not even looking to get who's like QB 20 right now.
The problem is it's a mismatch of team priority.
Oh, absolutely.
So
you need a team that has extra QBs.
Yeah, and I mean that's almost impossible to find. And you need a team that has extra QBs that needs an elite linebacker. You're not even trading for elite QB for Roquan. Like you're trading for like a Derek Carr, right, or a Garoppolo or something. So you might need an intermediate.
It's an issue that they brought up that I agree with. I don't know how liquid those assets are.
Yeah, I think you need to. Yeah, it's like liquidating into draft picks or having a 3-team trade, which still hasn't happened in our league as much as I try.
I tried too, Paul.
And but I don't have as big of a concern as they do, especially because our league values defensive players more than they think we do. And I think we correctly value defensive players at a higher level than they do. Not even. I think it makes it sound like I'm blaming them for not. They do a lot of these. They don't. I think that our league's just a little bit unique.
Yeah, you don't see many.
11 Will Anderson at the 3rd round.
Yeah,
shows how they value the IDPs. So
I mean, Hutch went 111, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, Will Anderson's viewed a step above. So.
I will say I'm reading the transcript right now, and the transcription of Dre Greenlaw into Dragon Law might be my favorite.
New team name.
The third to last page, bottom paragraph.
I think we need to talk about the fact that they thought for sure that Alec was the one who paid for this podcast.
Come on, I don't have that much ego.
It was almost derisive the way that they said it. It was so funny. Let's see if we can find that in the transcript. But
I believe it was at the beginning when they started talking about the team.
Was it here? I mean, you're seeing an owner that is making some savvy moves.
That was the best line of the whole podcast.
I put it in the league chat today.
Oh my god!
I printed that out and I put it on my wall. That motivates me every day.
Okay, I can't find it, but that was pretty funny. All right, we're 1 hour 20 minutes in. Sam, thank you for joining as a guest.
Jesus.
course.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, we took longer than the podcasters.
It's true.
We've been doing this for every team. This is the number one team. Is this the team? Is this the roster that you'd rather have than any other roster in the league?
Yes.
100%. Yeah. How could you not?
I mean, winning's fun, but it definitely
Guys,
doesn't have the most draft capital.
I would argue that I would rather have Kyler Murray or Derek Carr compared to somebody like Jalen Hurts.
All right. I just needed to hear Paul admit that he likes my roster.
Yes, it's a very good roster. I think I've been praising it all stream. So give me a break here, Alec. I don't.
I just like
Alec
in
must be feeling pretty good.
the whisker charts. You see go from Sam at number 2 with the highest draft to Alec at the bottom with the lowest.
Opposites.
I am so fascinated to see where our league goes in the next 2-3 years. It's going to be really interesting, and I'm so happy that the league has stayed together for 2 years, and I feel like now we're established. I think it's not going.
I think it's a
away.
long-lasting league for sure.
Yeah, the people are good. We were even able to survive somebody leaving. I'm really happy with everybody in the league. So I just
And like even the teams that are at the bottom now, for the most part, you see a path to them being competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Austin's team was, looking. I mean, we always saw the potential, but like it was, like doing really poorly, right? But we saw how it was going to be able to grow over the years. Sam's team too, and now look at them, top 4.
Look at how they've grown up.
Yeah, and Alec and I, we've been competing for 2 years. I'm going to be jealous of Alec being able to compete for longer than I will, but such is life, such is Dynasty.
Yeah, we'll see. You never know. Things can flip on their head.
That's true.
So we made it through 2 years of Dynasty. Are we going to make it through? They say that like a podcast really becomes a podcast after you record 15 episodes. Do you think we're going to get to that 15 episode podcast mark?
Well, that's okay. I'm glad you brought it up. Alec and I, while I was listening to podcasts, we were brainstorming podcast ideas. So
Are we still live?
Yeah, we're still live. I can cut this, but I figure our audience would like to know what's coming up. So
I'm glued to the screen.
So here's a few thoughts that I had. I thought so we would want to do a weekly podcast, right? So after we want a weekly review potentially. It can be a lot shorter than this behemoth, which nobody's going to listen to. But let me see.
This was almost a combination of a reaction, but also a roster breakdown.
Yeah, I didn't keep it on.
I think it's hard to not do both though.
Yeah, that's true.
They're commenting on the roster, which makes us comment on the roster.
Okay, so here's some podcast ideas, and guys, feel free to come up with new ones. So we've done the 2 years, so a year 1 review, a year 2 review would be fun. Rookie draft review would be very, very fun. Season preview we'll definitely do. And then my other idea was a reaction podcast, which we did, and here we are.
Maybe we'll have some shorter form reactions.
We'll try to keep it shorter going forward, but
waiver wire pickups.
Because obviously we can't do the podcast before the waiver wire clears, so we'll do it after that, I think. And
reactions to the waiver wire.
Shorts now. His attention span isn't long enough anymore.
10 seconds, sir. I won't watch it.
All right. Thank you all for listening.
I'm sure you're all still there.
Please find something better to do with your time.
Oh, God, yes.